all of your HR needs for a fraction of the cost. Last month, we did a side-by-side comparison for a company with 60 employees. They saved $80,000 a year without giving up a single service, feature, or benefit. We're Magellan. We provide payroll, HR, and benefits for less, a lot less. Text HCM to 57500 now to get a free comparison to see how much you could save.
Hi folks, it's Doug and Kathy with Window World.
I've been thinking our window features are awesome, but professional installation really makes our windows far superior.
That's for sure. Our installers are trained and experienced to do the job right.
They're employees and a valuable asset for our team.
We trust them, and so can you.
Let's get you on our schedule. Call 801-281-8111 and our team will take care of you.
Or visit windowworldutah.com, and we promise no baloney.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are looking at a crash-free, delay-free drive on all the Valley freeways, including I-15 along the Wasatch Front. Construction causing slowdowns southbound Redwood Road, 4100 south to about 6200 south by the I-215 belt route. Found your dream house, but not your dream rate? Make your purchase with a home loan from Cyprus Credit Union. Refinance within 12 months if rates drop, and we'll take care of the refinancing fees. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny today and a high of 89. Right now it's 84 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
When it comes to the economy, it feels like new inflation numbers are coming out regularly. For a lot of Americans, it's more of a feel thing. But for the Fed, it's all about the data. That's everything. Where you begin, then the conversation can go somewhere important. Someone who looks at those numbers and listens to those stories every day is Mary Daly, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and she joins us live in studio. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, I have been looking forward to this conversation all week long to get beyond the headlines of the economy and all of those data points and talk with Mary Daly, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. It's great to have you back on the show, and it is fantastic to have you here in the state of Utah.
It's fantastic to be in the state of Utah, and as I've learned to say from all my years of travel here, it's the great state of Utah.
That's exactly right. Well, tell us about what you've been doing here in the state. You've had a jam-packed agenda. We know we're the last stop before you get to exhale, but tell us what you've been up to.
Well, I've just had a fantastic visit. We came on Wednesday. We spent, this is our third day here, and really a big part of what we do while we're here is engage with the community, the business leaders, the people running small businesses, medium-sized businesses, global businesses, to learn how they're experiencing the economy. And we've learned a lot. You talked about data right at the top of your remarks, and the data are more than just the headline numbers that you see printed in the Wall Street Journal or another press media outlet. They're really the numbers that people look at when they look at their revenue books or their profitability or how hard it is to hire people, how much their input prices are rising. Those pieces of information help us shape the policy that we craft when we go back to the FOMC meeting. Yeah.
And so let's talk about that for a second in terms of helping our listeners understand the role of the San Francisco Fed. You got a big chunk of the country. It's 8 states here in the West, but it's a big chunk in places like Utah that used to be kind of a crossroads of the West and now is kind of a crossroads to the world in many instances business-wise. Give us some perspective in terms of what is the job and what's the task?
So the job is really we say we have a billboard at the front or a banner at the front of our bank that says our work serves every American and countless global citizens. And that's because of the work we do, which is given to us by Congress, is to create monetary policy that keeps the prices stable, low and stable, price inflation low and stable, and keeps everyone in America who wants a job able to work because jobs are plentiful and available. And those two goals we work hard to achieve. And one of the reasons we collect so much information from I have 9 states in the West, so I have 1/5 of the U.S. population in the district, the 12th district, and I go to all of these states to collect that information and be able to shape policy that really tries to work for every American.
And so let's look at those kind of those two components that I think everyone feels every day, and that is the inflation factor in terms of what the cost of goods are, and then that employment number.
Right.
How do you keep that proper balance between those, especially with what we've seen, particularly over the last year to 18 months?
Sure. So we do have those two goals, and one of them right now is still we're not achieving it, and that's the inflation part. I think everyone, inflation's coming down, thankfully, and people feel this directly in their pocketbooks, and businesses feel it directly on their bottom line, but it's still too high. We have a 2% inflation target. That's because 2% is about the rate where nobody thinks about inflation when they make decisions. You don't have to worry about it, and we're not there yet. On the full employment side, on everybody who wants a job can find one, well, people can find multiple jobs now.
Right.
And it's really the employers who are having a challenging time finding workers. And, even walking around Utah or walking around Salt Lake and seeing things, businesses are still just one staff person calling in sick away from having to say, we can't serve as many clients as we want. We can't have that shift open. So I still think the labor market's pretty tight, especially here in Utah. And, bringing the economy to a slower and more sustainable pace of growth will just ease some of that employment pressure, but still allow people who want to work to get out there and find a number of jobs to choose from, but also give relief in that bottom line in those pocketbooks, which are important for people to save and to grow their families in the way that they want.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the real interesting challenges over the course of the last year in particular is kind of aligning a lot of the good news of the economy with what people are feeling around that kitchen table. They're not quite an alignment in all of those. How do you see that playing out, and what are you hearing around the district?
That's a terrific question. I'm so glad you asked it. So it's pretty easy to feel excitement, not so much as a policymaker, but certainly there's a lot of enthusiasm and inflation's coming down. So we spend a lot of time around those proverbial kitchen tables. We bring workers in, families, community groups in and say, how are people feeling about the economy? Are you still making trade-offs that feel like inflation's one of the only things you think about? And we're hearing that it's not just that inflation's been rising rapidly, but now the price of things that were much cheaper before the pandemic, eggs often come up. Eggs are 3 times the price that they once were, and if you're a family of 4 or 5 or 6 that needs eggs, well, you're feeling that pain, and that feels material to people. So it's not just about eggs, of course. It's about transportation, housing, food. It's about energy. It's about just doing the things. Everything's more expensive than it used to be, and so the Fed's job is to get that rate of price increases down and allow the economy to settle back out so that people feel like the dollar they earn not only holds value, but then allows them to make the investment, spending, and savings decisions that they want to.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about your approach to all of this is, one, just your curiosity, and that you want to go out and you want to hear those stories. You want to have those conversations. And so as you've done that here in the state of Utah, give us a sense of what have you been hearing, and what are those stories, and how is that going to influence those policy decisions moving forward?
So I have heard something that's really heartening. I have heard people taking a deep breath and maybe a little bit of a sigh of relief. So I was here, 6 months ago, and what I saw were people who felt the economy was frantic. So on the employer side, they're just frantically trying to get workers. They're talking about 80% turnover rates. You can't keep people a week. And that was stressful, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't hit your bottom line if you can't keep workers. On the worker side, I was hearing, I keep trying to change jobs just to make an extra dollar because inflation's eroding my well-being and I can't afford to take care of my family like I expect to. So those two things have diminished, and people feel a little bit of relief. And I see that as a very positive development. So then the next question I ask is, what are you worried about? And they're still worried about inflation, wanting the Fed's policy to continue to work to bring inflation down so that they don't have to think about it.
Right.
But they want to make sure we do it as gently as we can so we don't end up causing another problem, which is we tip over the economy and they lose their jobs. And my job is to reassure them that my approach is bring inflation down, be resolute to do that, absolutely commit it, but also be thoughtful and patient to do it well without tipping the economy over.
Yeah, man, that is the ultimate high wire act that
It
you
is
get to do
indeed.
every day. And you talked about this in the Washington Post about a week or so ago, talking about kind of that exhaustion pulsing through. I love how you describe it in terms of people having kind of an exhale moment is so important. And so what's next? What are the things that you're watching for as we move into the fall? Of course, we got a lot of politics surrounding all of this that often gets in the way of good economic policy. But what are you watching for?
So here's what I'm watching for. I want to continue to see the inflation numbers coming down. I really don't want to see those flatten out. And we're not going to be satisfied with it stuck at 4% or even 3.5%, 3%. We need to have it bring down to 2%. I want to see that the labor market continues to slow. We need about 100,000 jobs per month. We're adding about 200,000 jobs per month. So we're still twice as fast as we need to be if we're going to get wages growing at a sustainable pace.
Yeah.
We're going to get that frantic feeling to totally go away. We're going to have that exhale moment be sort of a series of calm that kind of bleeds into next year. That's what I'm looking for. And in terms of risks, I'm going to be watching for abrupt changes. Either momentum picks up in a way we didn't expect, or we get a lot more slowing than we've forecast in. So both of those things, it's a period of time where we want to be managing risks, and that's another reason to be thoughtful and patient as we continue to make policy decisions, because really we have policy in a great place, and we have the time to be cautious and thoughtful as we make the next decision.
Yeah, so important. Between tapping the brake and pushing the gas, that is the constant ebb and flow of all of that.
And I grew up in the Midwest, and they also told you that there was a way where you can just coast without being on the brake or the gas as you determine what you're going to do next. So there are three positions: brake, gas, wait.
And that waiting is probably the hardest, I think.
It is the hardest thing.
Especially for politicians who always want to either hit the brake or pump on the gas. Coasting is not
Well,
a
I think for
bad
humans,
thing.
probably being on the brake or the gas is the instinct we all have.
Yeah. And you talk about your Midwest upbringing. I want to take just a second, because I think it's so important for listeners to understand that we have someone making policy that's impacting all of us who really gets it. And going from a high school dropout to the president and CEO of the San Francisco Fed is no small journey. Will you just give us a snapshot of that so people can say, all right, she gets it?
Well, I think I do get it in this way. I saw it. I saw my parents struggle with high inflation back in the 70s, and they were making those kitchen table decisions where they were putting bills to one side because we obviously couldn't pay all of them at once. And then when we got the inflation down, they lost their jobs. And the consequences, now you're really caught in a bind. Yeah. And I took that with me, even when I didn't really know it. And it just gave me the power and the will to move from, dropped out of high school to help support my family, but then found a mentor. Mentorship couldn't be more important in our society and our economy. Found a mentor. She nudged me to keep going. And ultimately, when I got my PhD, I feel like I got it in a way that is basically to help the people who I lived near, and they didn't have a voice and they didn't have a place at the table. I am trying to be their place at the table.
I absolutely love that. Give us one thing quickly that you wish we were talking about when it comes to the economy in this country.
So one thing I think has gotten left behind in this whole discussion of the pandemic and how we're going to come out of that and high inflation is the workforce of our economy is critical, and ensuring that our people are capable and ready and getting lifelong training so that they can be whoever they need to be and want to be to continue to participate in the labor force, that's going to be critical. Utah has this very low unemployment rate, but I was very pleased to see that the community colleges and the universities are really trying to create opportunities that no matter what you want to do, whether you want a 4-year degree or a 3-month certificate, you have a place and you have a roadmap to get to the economy of tomorrow. That's what I want us to be talking about.
Fantastic as always. We'd keep you all day, but we know you got a plane to catch. Mary Daly is the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Always a delight. We appreciate your insight. We appreciate your work and your leadership because it impacts all of us, and we're grateful for it. And thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you so much. I've had a terrific time. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. That's Mary Daly, once again, CEO, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and do a little recap and reassess as we move it forward on Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Well, that was BYU did not move the ball.
Underwhelming.
The Cougs will punt it away.
This week, the Cougars try to pick up the pace against Southern Utah. Listen for our extended pregame coverage Saturday starting at 9 and kickoff at 1 on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work. At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
If you've had painful kidney stones, you know you don't want more. Moonstone Stone Stopper is a simple solution that works. Created and recommended by top kidney stone doctors, Stone Stopper is an alkali citrate formula scientifically proven to prevent crystallization. Stone Stopper's patented formula is gentle on the stomach and is available in easy-to-swallow capsules, gummies, and powder drinks that make hydration delicious. Stone Stopper is available at participating Walmart and Walgreens stores. Look for the red stop sign on the bottom shelf of the vitamin aisle. For more information or to find a store near you, go to stonestopper.com.
At Shane Company, we believe everybody is made to shine. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Your moments, your milestones, your love story all deserve to shine bright. You don't need an occasion. You and your life are the event. So put on earrings that make you sparkle, diamonds that light up the room, an heirloom you'll treasure for years to come. We're all made to shine. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
If you were in the market to sell your home, wouldn't you want to be with Utah's #1 team? That would be the Stern Team. They've been rated #1 by Real Trends for 2022.
I was on the Stern Team's website just the other day. It's sternteam.com, STERN team.com. And I'm a homeowner. I mean, many of you are. You just click on sell and you go to home evaluation. And in less than 30 seconds, you'll find out what the value of your home is. I did, and it was thrilling.
And of course, if you want to get your home out there in front of as many buyers as possible, listen to this. The Stern Team now has over 100 active buyer clients who are looking for a home right now.
And they have all the options you want. Like they have an instant cash offer if that's what you're looking for, or a buy before you sell program. They even have flexible fees customized to your needs.
The average Salt Lake City agent sells 8 homes a year. The Stern Team helps over 400 families reach real estate goals every year.
The Stern Team helps by creating more demand, resulting in more multiple offer situations that will get you more money.
Go to sternteam.com or Google the Stern Team.
Every business deserves a great deal. That's why, for a limited time, we're launching the Mobile Made Free event. With Comcast Business Internet, new and existing customers can get 1 year of unlimited mobile for free. Yep, you heard that right. An entire year, free. It's our best internet, powered by the next generation 10G network and with 99.9% reliability, plus 1 line of free mobile for a year. The Mobile Made Free event is happening now.
Get started with internet and advanced security for $49.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Plus, for a limited time only, ask how new and existing customers can get a free line of unlimited mobile during the Mobile Made Free event. Call or go online today to learn more. Ends 9/21/2023. EcoBill and autopay required. New 50 megabits per second internet and Security Edge customers only. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. Mobile offer requires 100 megabits per second internet package and new unlimited intro mobile service. Other restrictions apply.
Join the Utah Symphony for the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahsymphony.org.
Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News. We're committed to letting you know exactly what's going on. On our show, we're going to bring you up to speed on what's happening in the world to this moment. At the same time, the news can be really burdensome. It can leave you feeling a little bit depressed and even a little bit more depressed. My Minute of News is just a moment to lift you up. I'm blessed that KSL has given me the freedom to talk about whatever I want. Literally, it is my minute of news. Sometimes it's pegged to what's happening that very day. Sometimes it might be something bizarre that you didn't know happening somewhere else in the world. To make you smile for a moment, even on a difficult day, and make you realize the world is still spinning. I am so honored that so many people have appreciated and enjoy the Minute of News every afternoon.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Lindsay Aerts. First, a private company wants to mine the Great Salt Lake for lithium. They say they'll have to pump out water, but will return it to the lake. Second, Murray's Planning Commission is putting new business permits on hold after concerns were raised by the Humane Society of Utah that it would put dangerous dust into the air, but the business says that wouldn't even be possible. And third, a special grand jury investigating efforts to overturn Georgia's 2020 presidential election results recommended indictments against a much larger group than prosecutors ultimately charged. Right now it's 84 degrees. Back to Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, if you missed that last segment, you're going to want to go check that out on the podcast this afternoon, anywhere you get your podcast. We were joined by Mary Daly, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. We discussed everything from the Utah economy, shaping monetary policy, what she's seeing and hearing while she was here in the state of Utah. And I just want to take a couple minutes as we round out this first half hour of the program. Just some takeaways there. I love her approach to all this. You think of someone who's an economist and you think, oh, it's going to be dollars and cents and numbers and zeros and data points. And one of the things I love about Mary Daly is that she is always looking for what's the underlying story, not just what's the data telling us, but what are the people actually experiencing. And I thought she hit it right on the head. She said, there is this kind of energy in the economy, kind of this exasperation. People are stressed a little bit as inflation continues to hold at a little bit higher level. And so people are making that part of their daily conversations. It's a part of the stressors of day-to-day living, the price of eggs and so on. And she said what she is starting to see is as some of those inflation numbers start to go down just a little bit, there's sort of an exhale moment. And then that's her job. Part of her job as the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve of San Francisco is to make sure that those things are staying in balance so that inflation comes down and that jobs are there for those that want to work and that they have real opportunities and wages can go up, and connecting all of those dots. It is no small task. And the other thing she mentioned that I thought was so important, we often talk about monetary policy. We talk about the economy in terms of tapping on brakes and putting on gas. And she said there's actually a third option, and that is sometimes you just have to ride it a little bit. You don't have to be pressing on the gas, and you don't have to be tapping on the brake. And I got a sense that she feels that's kind of where we are, so that we shouldn't be panicking and hitting the gas, flooring it, and that we shouldn't be jamming the brake and stopping everything. And what a great message that is, not just for monetary policy and economics. That's a good lesson for a lot of places in our lives where we often feel like we either need to be going faster or jamming the brakes and slowing down. And sometimes you just need to coast a little bit and just exhale. And so I think in terms of the economy and jobs, I think that's kind of where she feels things are, that we just need to kind of ride this for a little bit. And then you can make those adjustments. If you need a little more gas, if you need a little more brake, you can do those things. But you don't have to always be doing one or the other. Often we see in Washington, D.C., the opposite. Well, I don't know if it's the opposite of that. It's the ineffective version of that. And that's you got a whole bunch of people hitting the gas and a whole bunch of people jamming the brake. And what that leads to is a really nice spin out, which is what we're seeing in Washington, D.C., and what we'll continue to see over the next month, especially as we go through getting the government funded before the end of the month. Yes, September 30th will come this year, as it does every year. But often that's the D.C. problem. You got some people who want to just hit the gas full throttle, and you want some people who just want to slam the brake, and you end up in a spin out. And so sometimes you just need to exhale. Sometimes you just need to pause a little bit and let it play out just a little bit. Don't have to overreact either way. One of the other things that I want to note about Mary Daly that I think is such an important leadership lesson. One, she talked about mentors and the difference that mentors made in her life. And again, you have to understand her family was struggling in the Midwest, dropped out of high school to help the family, and then she got a mentor. She was working all kinds of jobs: donut shop, Target, bus driver. A mentor encouraged her to get her GED, which then turned into going to a community college. And now she's the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. That's quite a story. And it's because somebody took interest in her and showed her she could do more and be more and become more because she had it in her. And that's what great mentors do. It's stewardship at its very finest. And what I love about Mary Daly is she now lives that and returns that. And I'll give you a quick anecdote of that. When Mary Daly and her team came in here to KSL today to have this conversation, immediately she was off looking at the newsroom here at KSL, wanting to ask questions, wanting to know more, wanting to understand who is out there, why they're out there, what do they do. And that's great leaders. I've seen so many leaders, from politicians to business leaders, who travel around with an entourage and they're always just kind of in their bubble and they don't interact with any real people. Mary Daly is the opposite of that. She is always engaged with people. She wants to know the story. She wants to know what they're feeling. She wants to understand what is the reality. Forever curious. And that's how you get a leader that can lead you to great policy, whether it's monetary policy, economic policy, governmental policy, or just leading a community or a family. Some great examples there. So a big thanks to Mary Daly, President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, for stopping in with us here on Inside Sources today. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Much more Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour: a federal grand jury in Salt Lake City returned an indictment charging a Salt Lake City man for allegedly attempting to carjack a woman with the daughter still inside. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera reports.
Salt Lake City police say the woman and her daughter stopped for a flat tire. As the mother was checking her tire pressure outside, a man identified as Zachary Cover jumped in the driver's seat of the BMW. Before he could drive off, the victim told Cover her daughter was in the back seat when a physical altercation between the mother and Cover ensued. Even though she was struck several times, she was able to pull him out, knock a gun out of his hand, and drive away to safety. Cover is being federally charged for carjacking. Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. That wasn't a decorative Halloween skull in the donation box of a Goodwill store in Arizona. ABC's Alex Stone has that story.
The real human skull with a fake eyeball in it may have looked like a Halloween decoration, but it was real. Placed in a donation box at Goodwill in Goodyear, Arizona, shoppers at the store saying,
I've never seen a human skull before. Not a real one anyway, you know.
Police say it was an historic item and not the victim of a crime. From what they can tell, the donator may not have even known it was real.
When you're in law enforcement and public safety, you never know what you're going to get.
Goodwill says its team followed protocol, and when they found the skull in their donation box, they called police. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average up on the day 23 points right now. The NASDAQ just barely less than 1 point. And the S&P 500 up about 1 point right now. And our KSL weather: sunny for the afternoon, but some clouds moving in tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
The Utah Division of Emergency Management says make a plan. Identify a meeting place outside your home in case of fire and outside your neighborhood in case you're separated in a disaster. Get a kit. Besides your disaster kit, have at least a 2-week supply of food and water stored at home. Be informed. Check your earthquake and flood insurance. And finally, get involved.
Remember, when family members take action toward preparedness, you will all be ready. For more, visit beready.utah.gov. That's beready.utah.gov.
Don't be worried. Be ready. KSL News Radio is partnering with Be Ready Utah to provide the plans your family needs for an emergency, the tools and supplies to keep on hand, and the knowledge on how to keep a cool head. It's Be Ready Utah. Listen for Be Ready tips and tools each Tuesday with Dave Dujanovic. Plus, find the latest preparation info at beready.utah.gov. That's beready.utah.gov. Be Ready Utah with KSL News Radio.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
UDOT crews have just removed a ladder in the roadway northbound I-15 approaching 90th South Sandy. It's now out of traffic, and the backup and the slowing that debris in the road was causing is starting to ease. UDOT construction alert. Plan ahead for delays on I-15 in Davis County this weekend. Northbound I-15 will be closed Saturday night and reduced to 3 lanes on Sunday between Centerville and Farmington. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny today, clouds moving in tomorrow and Sunday. We could see a few thunderstorms in the mountains. Today's high 89, cooling to 85 by Monday. It's 86 and sunny right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attack is approaching. Of course, that will be on Monday of next week. Always a hard, challenging day as we look back to a difficult moment in our nation's history. But the legacy of 9/11 is not just the act of terror itself, but the aftermath, when Americans and people across the country and all around the world came together, supported each other like never before. Everyone set aside the differences. It wasn't about blue states and red states or who you voted for president or anything else. It was about a common cause and a common focus. Well, David Payne is someone who has directly helped shape that legacy of what the positives are coming out of 9/11, and he's the co-founder of the 9/11 National Day of Service, and we are just absolutely thrilled to have him joining us on the show today. David, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start with some of the history of this. You created the 9/11 Day of Service back in collaboration with some close friends, and give us a little bit of that story.
Yeah, it was just a couple of months after the 9/11 attacks. I had a very good friend of mine, Jay Winnick, who lost his brother Glenn in the collapse of the World Trade Center South Tower. And Jay's brother Glenn was an attorney, but he was also a volunteer firefighter and an EMT. And like a lot of brave people, he ran into the tower and was in the process of getting people out of there when the building came down. And I'd been a born and raised New Yorker, and nothing hit me harder than 9/11. And I just sat down with Jay, and together we said, how do we take this day back? How do we turn it into something good so that our children don't only learn about the horror of it, but something more positive? And I think we were inspired by the way the nation did exactly what you said. We weren't red states or blue states. We were just human beings helping one another. And I think it awakened me to the realization that, that while we may not agree on a lot of things, we are all, fundamentally kind, decent, compassionate people that care about one another. And maybe that ought to be the legacy that we pass on for generations to come.
Yeah, I love the part of that legacy. Of course, in 2009, President Barack Obama joined the U.S. Congress, bipartisan, bicameral basis, formally designating September 11th as a National Day of Service and Remembrance. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, it was certainly a hard-fought effort because, we did have to spend quite a bit of time encouraging members of Congress to get behind it. But ultimately, in the end, it was and is one of those wonderful things where it isn't a political thing. It's Republicans and Democrats alike, holding hands and agreeing that we need to find a way to remember that's positive and constructive, that brings people together. So it was at that point, I really believe, that our organization and the day started to really turn around. And over, now the last 12 years or so, 9/11 has grown to become the largest day of service in the nation, with more than 33 million Americans spending time doing good deeds, helping others in need.
I love that. And I love the fact that you pointed out, David, that it was not until 2009 is hard fought. Even when people agree on things, it takes a long time to get something enacted into law. And so we appreciate your perseverance there. So give us some perspective first on the national scale, and then I want to get to some of the local things, including Just Serve and what they're doing tomorrow and over the next few days. But let's start on the national level. What do you see happening this year?
Well, this will be the largest 9/11 day of service that I've ever experienced. And I'm not sure if it's because we've all been coming out of the pandemic or what, but people seem to have a real longing to get back together with one another, to help each other. And so we're expecting millions of people to spend the day doing good deeds and helping others. And then we ourselves, our organization, we're staging 18 very large-scale volunteer service projects around the nation, in which close to 20,000 volunteers will be packing meals for people who are at risk of hunger. I think in total we'll pack about 6.5 million meals. I will say that in Utah, no state has embraced 9/11 more than the state of Utah. And Just Serve, what an incredible organization in partnership, where they have hundreds of activities around the nation and in the state where people will be volunteering in tribute on this really important and solemn day of service.
Yeah, so tell us about some of that connection with Just Serve and some of the specific things you see happening here in the state of Utah as we move towards 9/11.
Well, Just Serve's been a terrific partner of ours. Over the last couple of years, they've started to help us establish volunteer opportunities for people, so that if an individual wants to volunteer, help in the community for 9/11, they can just go to the Just Serve website, and they can basically search for project opportunities within their own community and sign right up for them. And we feature Just Serve on our website as one of sort of the go-to places where people can find volunteer opportunities. And having worked with the Just Serve leadership, too, what a wonderful group. I mean, very committed to what 9/11 Day is all about, particularly the idea of just bringing people together around the spirit of unity.
It's such an important thing, and we do realize that once we get people together, we do have so much more in common. There's nothing better than going side by side with someone with a shovel, or handing out soup at the soup kitchen, or packing lunches and food for those that may have food insecurities. There's just nothing better than being side by side with somebody, and everything else seems to go away. And we end this show every day. The last thing we say every day is do something that makes a difference. And you've kind of encapsulated our whole finish, which is see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference. And I think what you've done with your organization in helping us focus on that legacy of 9/11, to just do something that makes a difference, it is the best way to heal the nation. It's the best way to move the nation forward.
It's also the best way, I think, to teach our children about kindness and unity, because 99 million Americans today are under the age of 25. They have no memories of the 9/11 attack. So it's really upon all of us as parents and teachers and mentors to sit down with our children and, tell them about what happened on 9/11, not the scary part of it, but about how it brought out the best in all of us, regardless of, our race or religion or what we believed or who we voted for or anything like that. It demonstrated that at the core of who we truly all are, at our time of birth, we're all the same. We're all loving, caring people that just need to remember that maybe we might have a difference of opinion now and then, but that doesn't separate us as human beings. And if we could teach that lesson to our children, then that would be the best possible way of giving meaning to the loss of a lot of people who died on 9/11.
Yeah, so important. And we often say that that which we ignore or forget, our children will never know. And what our children don't know, our grandchildren are not likely to possess. And I so appreciate, David, that you raised this fact that so many of our young people weren't alive when this happened. They don't have a memory of that. And so there is a little bit of a disconnect. And this is a great way to remember not only those who tragically lost their lives, but that moment and moments that followed when the nation really came together.
One of the things I've learned over 22 years, when people said to me and Jay that, as time would go by, people would be less interested in the 9/11 Day of Service. And in fact, it's been the opposite, where there's ever-growing interest and support. And I think it's because we're fundamentally about trying to make the world a better place, one good deed at a time. And there is no expiration date on kindness. People, no matter whether they remember 9/11 or don't, or were never born at that time, when you ask them, please help, be kind, this is the way that we should be all living our lives, people, they just run to that idea. And I think that's what's happening here.
Fantastic. David Payne is the CEO and co-founder of the September 11 National Day of Service and Remembrance. You all can still participate. Go to Just Serve. Plenty of opportunities out there. There's so many things happening in our communities over the weekend. This is a chance to go out and do something that makes a difference, remember an important legacy and part of our history, and actually help heal the nation and continue to move the country forward. David, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. When we come back, more Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
Before you head to work, before you hit the gym,
keep going, that's it.
Before you make your way home.
Bye.
Get a quick check on traffic and weather.
PD on the scene at 8 South and West Temple.
Highway 89 also really backed up. Listen every 10 minutes on the 9s. In your car at 102.7 FM. Or tell Alexa, play KSL News Radio.
I guess it's human nature, Amanda, that no matter how much money we have in our savings account, it never seems like it's enough. And if you find yourself in that mode right now, let us direct you over to our friends at UCCU. They are wanting to help you supercharge your savings.
UCCU is offering high-rate savings options with yields up to 5.5%. All you do is go to UCCU.com and select a high-rate savings option to do just what you said, supercharge your savings.
You're going to get a much bigger return on your savings right now. It's a savings certificate, which means you make one deposit up front and your money grows over a fixed period of time. So you can have that grow over 5 years, but UCCU has created some very short-term savings certificates with high yields, short like 6 months, 9 months, or a year.
So you decide how long do you want to put that money. You deposit money, a one-time only deposit, and then you let it stay in. The longer it stays in there, the higher the interest rate you earn.
And if you need immediate access to your money, UCCU's Money Market will give you a high yield and anytime access.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net. The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at Mountain America Expo, Thursday, September 14th through Sunday, September 17th. Come see the new 2024 models and special closeout pricing on all 2023 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
3 little words no parent wants to hear.
My tummy hurts.
And it always seems to happen at the worst times. Like in the middle of the morning rush, when you still have homework to check and lunches to pack, and of course, you're already late for work. Luckily, there's Pepto Kids. New Pepto Kids gummies helps relieve occasional stomach upsets, turning those 3 words into these 3 words.
I feel better.
Bad time for stomach upsets? Good time for new Pepto Kids gummies. Fast support for little tummies.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. Of course I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to clean tough messes off my stovetop and bathtub. But then I discovered I can also use it to easily clean my patio furniture and even my shoes. I'm hooked.
And when wipes won't cut it, I use Magic Eraser Sheets. They're thin and flexible erasers, perfect for everyday messes, like gunk on my counters and sinks. They really are magical.
The reviews are in. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and Sheets make cleaning look easy.
Fall in love with the Five All's Restaurant this autumn season, a Salt Lake City original, featuring a cozy atmosphere, perfect for all your special occasions.
Even before the pandemic, 1 in 5 American adults experience some form of mental illness, depression, suicide, prescription opioid misuse. Utah isn't immune to our share of challenges, but there is hope. We need to take action to keep our loved ones safe. That's why KSL has teamed with the University of Utah Huntsman Mental Health Institute to bring you hope and help you thrive. It's Healthy Mind Matters. Find out more at healthymindmatters.com.
All in together now, we can make it better. Can we do it? We'll rope it up.
Because we know how to jump.
Moving and eating better every day can help make you and your kids healthier. Search We Can online to find out more. A message from the Ad Council, HHS, and NIH's We Can program.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, federal authorities in Utah prosecuting an attempted carjacking case. Second, former President Trump raising money for Rudy Giuliani's legal defense. And third, somebody donated a skull to a Goodwill store in Arizona. Not surprising with Halloween coming up, but it turned out to be a real human skull, not a replica. Right now, 86 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources, an inside look at 2024 presidential politics.
Well, it is that time of the week to go a little deeper on 2024 presidential politics. And as we always say, trying to understand the behavior of someone running for president of the United States is like trying to smell the color 7 some days. And some days it is a challenge to figure out what are they thinking, what are they trying to do. And so we're going to go through a few of the different candidates and take a look at what they're doing, what's going right, what's going wrong, what needs to be done better. Let's start with the president. The president began the week at home celebrating American Labor Day. He then flew to India for the G20 summit, which is where President Biden is now. We'll talk about that a little later on in the second hour. The Republican Party candidates have been hard at work campaigning in those critical early states of New Hampshire and Iowa, South Carolina, trying to parlay some of the good that came out of the presidential debate in Milwaukee a few weeks ago and working towards the next presidential debate for the Republicans, which will actually be at the Reagan Library coming up on the 27th of September. So let's start with one of those who did very well in that first debate. Nikki Haley was one of the top performers following the Milwaukee debate. Outside of a town hall in New Hampshire, she was asked by a reporter what was behind her bump and jump in the polls. Here's what she had to say.
I think we've spoken a lot of hard truths, and I think that Granite Staters appreciate that. You know, whether it's hard truth about the fact that Republicans and Democrats have spent like drunken sailors, whether it's hard truths on the fact that national security matters and you can't just say crazy things and not go and protect Americans in the process, whether it's the fact that we're talking about parents' rights, those things matter to Americans. And so we're going to keep speaking hard truths, but we're going to also talk about what the solutions are to fix those things. And we love that Granite Staters are getting involved and joining our team, but we're going to keep our head down, we're going to keep working and make sure we earn every single person's support.
So those Granite Staters in New Hampshire, they do like to hear the hard truth, and I think that was really one of the shining moments for Nikki Haley in the first debate, giving some of those hard truths, talking about the fact that both Democrats and Republicans were spending like drunken sailors, that they're really not being responsible, either side, and I thought that was an important call-out. Also, obviously, her foreign policy experience, saying you just can't say crazy stuff. even on a debate stage. You have to be serious about all of that. And so I do think that Nikki Haley has had a moment. The question is, can she parlay that into momentum and a sustained forward movement? That's always the test in presidential politics. You see a lot of rises and falls. We see that on both the Democratic and the Republican side of the aisle in these big clashes to become the nominee for president. And that is always the test. Now, this was an interesting little bit of insight. Nikki Haley was asked what lessons she learned from the first debate and what she planned to carry into the second debate. And what she highlighted is a point that is very perceptive and very important when you're looking at who should I vote for president.
I'll continue to be myself. I'll continue to say what I think. And the best debate prep, honestly, are these town halls that we do every day. They ask us the tough questions. They sit there and want us to spend the time. And it's great debate prep for us because it prepares us for the debate stage.
So I love that. A lot of candidates isolate themselves. They do high-level campaigning. They do big rally kind of events. They do a lot of social media. They do big campaign ads. And then hope they do well on the debate stage. But what Nikki Haley's saying is, look, being out amongst the people is actually the best debate prep because then you're answering real questions from real people in a real way, not in just a canned way, not in a bullet point kind of way or talking point, not in a bumper sticker soundbite kind of way. And that's the best debate prep. And I think that is a lesson not only for every presidential candidate, for every candidate from Congress to governors to city council, mayors. That is a great thing. If you want to have great debate prep, go talk to the people. Do a town hall. Do some sit downs. Go door to door. Engage in real conversation with real people. Now, earlier this week, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie appeared on CNBC with Brian Sullivan for an interview. He was asked directly about the inflation rate and if he agreed with the actions the Federal Reserve had taken to combat inflation. Here's his response.
You know, what we're seeing now is that inflation has started to retreat, I think almost exclusively because of Fed policy. We're certainly not seeing any reduction in spending by the Biden administration. The Fed will do its job the right way and begin to lower rates when they see that the people running the executive branch of government are not spending trillions and trillions in deficit spending a year. And so we can't blame all of this on the Fed. Now, they may have waited too long to do what they were doing on rates and therefore had to raise them much more quickly, and I would be critical of that. But in the end, the cause of this is Joe Biden and his spending and Donald Trump and his spending.
So, again, that's honest conversation right there. A lot of people are just pointing fingers at the Fed and the interest rate hikes and how that all has played out. But Chris Christie got it right. He said the Fed is reacting because of over-government spending. And the culprit is both the Biden administration and the Trump administration that have been spending far too much, have increased the national debt, continual deficit spending. And so this is an area where, again, I think Chris Christie called out both sides. Equal opportunity offender. That's a good thing. That's a good part of the conversation. And I think he helped frame things in a way that people can say, oh, yeah, the Fed has to do this because they're reacting to what is happening in the real world based on the overspending that's coming out of the executive branch and out of Congress. Now, yesterday we highlighted a speech given by former Vice President Mike Pence about conservatism versus populism. His speech applies directly to the presidential campaign, but also beyond it. It's kind of an overall direction question, I think, for the Republican Party. Here's a little clip from that speech.
The question of the hour, then, is not just who, but what will we offer the American people a year from this November? And I believe that choice will determine the fate of our party and the course of our nation for years to come. So today I ask my fellow Republicans this. Will we be the party of conservatism, or will we follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative principles? The future of this movement and this party belongs to one or the other, not both.
Hey, that's a good question. It's not who leads us, it's what leads us. What principles, what policies? That's a good question, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We're so caught on both the left and the right with that siren song of populism, as the former vice president described it, that leads to a lot of bad policy based on no principles at all. And it leads to things that actually end up hurting the very people you say you're there to help. And so I thought it was a very good speech from the former vice president. Will be interesting to see what the traction is of that speech, how that plays out, and if it does become a galvanizing message inside of that Republican Party primary. Now, President Biden, as we mentioned, is off in India doing presidential work, very important work. We're going to talk about that, as I mentioned, coming up in hour number 2. But as he was getting ready to depart, he was hit with some pretty tough numbers for the president. His overall approval rating continues to dip and slide, getting to some of the lowest levels he's been at during his presidency. The number of Democrats and Democrat-leading voters who want someone other than Joe Biden is getting into a very high number. 67% say the party should nominate someone other than President Biden. And, of course, former President Donald Trump's numbers are about the same in terms of people saying, yeah, we really should have someone else. So the interesting thing to me is you've got these two, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, that are actually kind of propping each other up in terms of where they are. So the question will be, will people see an alternative? From the latest CNN poll, Nikki Haley has emerged in a head-to-head against Joe Biden with a 6-point lead. She's the only one of all of the potential nominees for the Republicans who actually would be beating President Biden at the moment. So a lot of politics, a long, long way to go, but we do this every Friday at 1:50, taking a look at inside the presidential politics with Inside Sources. That wraps up hour number 1 of the show. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but as I mentioned, don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about a popular thing, get rid of the Department of Education. We'll talk about the fallacy of that and the reality of that coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, a private company wants to harvest lithium from the Great Salt Lake. It says it can do that and still put all the water back.
Waterleaf Resources says that their technology will pump water from the lake, run it through their system, and then return it to the lake within hours, hopefully maintaining the lake's water levels. Deputy Director of the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, Ben Steyerman, says they will be closely monitoring the project.
We would not allow lithium extraction at the expense of the Great Salt Lake.
Royalties will also be placed on the lithium. Those funds will go back into the conservation of the Great Salt Lake. Britt Johnson, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour. The European Union is having some low expectations ahead of the G20 meeting in India. President Biden is there in India. He met, actually, with the Prime Minister of India today.
Among those arriving for the international talking shop, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, who frankly acknowledges,
I don't think that this G20 will resolve in 2 days all the problems of the world and all the changes of the world. But I think it can be a bold step in the right direction, and we should work to make it happen and to support the Indian presidency.
Among his wishes to get China to change its position on Ukraine and to further isolate Russia, both of which won't gain much traction among many at the gathering. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 76 points on the day right now. The NASDAQ also up about 12 points right now, S&P up 6. And our KSL weather, looks like the clouds will move in a bit this weekend after a couple of beautiful days. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:02.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our clients' portfolios for their long-term goals.
You don't just provide cookie-cutter portfolios?
No, we tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions for you, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary, the highest standard of care for a financial advisor. It means we're obligated to act in our client's best interest.
So when do you make more money? Only when your clients make more money?
Yep, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly, different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
The next disaster is coming. The time to get ready is now. Make a plan. Identify meetup locations and people you'll need to contact. Put your contact list in your wallet, on your phone, and somewhere visible in your home. Build a kit. Store enough food and water for 3 days. Don't forget your pets. And consider buying a pre-made kit. Keep at least 7 days of medication on hand. Work with your pharmacist and insurance company to secure the extra doses. Make copies of important documents. Keep them on your phone, in the cloud, or on a USB stick. Stay informed. Learn about local hazards. Take courses in CPR and first aid. And sign up for local alert systems. An early warning can give you the time you need to prepare for a fast-moving disaster. Be ready. Learn more at americares.org/sendusin.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, we are still looking at a good drive on the Valley freeways, but in Murray, we do have traffic lights malfunctioning at the intersection of 4500 South and 7th East. Sprinkler system on autopilot. It's time to dial back outdoor watering. For more ways to save water, visit Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District at jvwcd.org/conservation. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny today with clouds moving in tomorrow and Sunday, and we could see a few thunderstorms in the mountains. Today's high 89, cooling to 85 by Monday. And right now, we're at 88 degrees under sunny skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, this campaign season, as with many campaign seasons before, the headline always coming out of a Republican debate or a big Republican event is the red meat line that whoever the candidate is going to abolish the Federal Department of Education. To much applause. Is that just a nice bumper sticker slogan? Is it fallacy? Is it reality? Let's get beyond the headline. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
It is always a pleasure to have joining us on the program Rick Hess, Senior Fellow and Director of Education Policy at American Enterprise Institute. And Rick, really interesting. Before I saw your piece, we actually had George Will in the state here, and he and I did an event. And as we were driving up there, we were talking about the Department of Education and how, you know, the closest thing to eternal on this planet is something that has started in Washington, D.C. as a program or as an agency. And George Will was commenting on in the context of Ronald Reagan and how he was so determined that he was going to get rid of what Jimmy Carter had just started. And here we are in 2023, and the battle rages on. So for our listeners, first, give us a little context in terms of the Department of Education. It's always popular, especially in Republican debates and primaries and so on, to talk about eliminating the Department of Education. Give us a historical setting, and then let's march it forward to how we are where we are today.
Sure. First off, folks should understand that Washington was involved in education before there was U.S. Department of Education. Back when Abraham Lincoln was president, U.S. got involved in giving states land for land-grant colleges. Washington's been given money for vocational education since the start of the 20th century. But in 1976, when he was running for president, Jimmy Carter promised the nation's biggest teachers union, the NEA, that he would create a Department of Education, primarily to help them get more money out of Washington. He got a Democratic Congress to do so in 1979. And as you just mentioned, when Ronald Reagan was running for president the next year, 1980, he said, by gosh, we're going to dismantle the Department of Education. He didn't. In fact, his Secretary of Education quickly went native. And in order to protect the Department of Education from the White House, he created a commission that launched something called a Nation at Risk. Reagan and the Secretary of Education, particularly Bill Bennett, would later go on to use that to talk about the need to improve American education. In Newt Gingrich's contract with America in 1994, they promised to abolish the Department of Ed. Republican presidential candidates have promised to abolish it repeatedly over time. Obviously, it is still here. Its budget has grown as much under Republicans as under Democrats. But what we see on the campaign trail this year is a bunch of candidates pledging that in 2024, if they get elected, they'll get serious about taking it apart.
Okay. So let's break this down. And I'm glad you noted that it was under the George W. Bush administration that was really a significant expansion there. And I was kind of chuckling along with the Blue Ribbon Commission. I think the last thing we need in this country is one more Blue Ribbon Commission. But it seems to be the answer. Whenever you're trying to save funding or to increase funding, you just create one more, Blue Ribbon panel of a Blue Ribbon panel. And here we are all the way down the road. So in your piece, you really went through how serious should we be taking this, and what does it actually mean to eliminate the Department of Education? So let's start there.
So it can mean almost anything. It's an easy soundbite for a candidate to say at a GOP debate. But look, if you abolish the Department of Education and just move all of the bureaucrats, all 4,000 of them, and all the programs and money over to Department of Labor or Health and Human Services, nothing has actually changed.
Right.
So for those of us who think Washington creates too much red tape, who think they're wasting money, who think they're spending money on dumb programs, the first order of business isn't really eliminating the department. The first order of business is, can we rein in or downsize some of the programs? The problem, and the reason the candidates don't talk about that, is the big programs tend to be pretty popular. The four biggest are student loans, Pell Grants for low-income folks to go to higher ed, money for children with special needs, and money for low-income K-12 students. Even Republicans who are serious about wanting to rein in Washington tend to be hesitant to talk about cutting any of those four programs.
Yeah, that becomes a completely different matter is when you start getting into that. And I love the way you frame this, that it becomes a much swampier discussion when we get to things like block grants and, all of the things that happen when you say, oh, well, let's get rid of everything in Washington. Let's just block grant everything back to the states. Lead us through the swamp, Rick, on a Friday.
Yeah, and in principle, sure, it would be better if Washington was giving this money to states with fewer strings, I think. But the reason those strings are there is what Washington's basically doing is giving communities back the money that it took from them, except when it's block granting it back, it's redistributing it. And what happens if Washington starts handing out grants to school systems, and it feels like free money because they don't have to justify it to local taxpayers and they don't have to get the bond issue, then there are a lot of superintendents who will start using this money on whatever flim-flam stuff is popular. They'll start using it on DEI or goofy SEL programs. They have a bad track record of letting some of this money get stolen or lost. And so what happens is then voters tend to yell at Washington, well, make sure you've got enough eyes on this that the money's not being wasted. And so the trick with block grants on something like schooling is that history tells us that pretty quickly we start asking Washington to put a lot of conditions on those block grants. And like you said, now we're back talking a whole bunch of rules in the swamp rather than how do we get Washington out of education.
Yeah. And so as you look at it marching forward, I was just looking at the numbers that you kind of delineated out there in terms of those biggest programs, in terms of Title I funds for the high poverty schools, $18 billion a year, special education funding, $15 billion, Pell Grants, $28 billion, significant pieces of that. And as you mentioned, a lot of those components are popular with Republicans as well as Democrats. So how do you change that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? I mean, I don't know how many Republican officials are passionate about taking care of children with special needs and their families. They don't want to cut those funds. So I think a couple things. I think it's fine to talk about abolishing the department. If nothing else, it keeps Democrats nervous, which isn't the worst thing. But with the real measure of a candidate talking about this ought to be, well, what are you actually going to do about it? There's 4,000 folks who work at the Department of Education. Who are you going to downsize there? Because we don't need all of those people to write checks for special education to states and communities. What are you going to do about plans that are going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars turning loans into free money to people who go to expensive graduate schools? What specifically are you going to do to loosen the regulations on Title I and special ed, both so that families can use those at private schools and in homeschooling environments, but also that school districts have more freedom to make sure they're serving kids well? If a candidate answers those questions, then I think it's great for them also to talk about abolishing the department. The trick is too many of them are using the soundbite of abolishing the department to get around talking about the more important stuff.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to give you the opportunity of Friday. Let's call it. I'm going to put you in the moderator's chair for the next Republican debate. Ironically or not ironically, it will be at the Reagan Library. So many will be trying to channel their inner Ronald Reagan. If they get to the education question and they go around the horn and everyone says, let's abolish it, what's the question that you would ask in terms of what is the conversation or the debate we should really be having when it comes to education in America?
One, I would say, first off, well, President Reagan couldn't get it done. And President Trump, even with a Republican Congress, didn't abolish or downsize the department. What are you going to do differently than they did? I think that's the first question.
Yeah.
I think the second question is whether or not you abolish the department, what do you think is the biggest educational challenge Americans face, and what can and should a president do about it?
There you go. We're going to wait for that question on September the 27th when the Republicans convene, and we shall see. I'm guessing we're going to get more bumper sticker and not a lot of specifics there. But that is the conversation we have to get to, and that's why we always have Rick Hess join us from AEI. Rick, thanks for joining us on a Friday. And it's important that we do get to this conversation as to what it means in terms of the real discussion, not just bumper sticker stuff when it comes to education in America. It is time to really think again about education. And you can complain all you want about the Department of Education, but again, there's programs within there that I don't know very many people who are against. Again, it's easy to use as a foil for big government, but you have to have a real solution. And what is the real solution? That's the conversation we should be having, and that's the one that hopefully will take place not just amongst Republicans. This is a conversation that we all need to engage in terms of what is the federal role when it comes to education, what needs to be done at the state and local level where those decisions can be made, and then what do we do about Title I funding for those poor and struggling areas? What do we do for handicapped children and students, and how do we support them, Pell Grants and so on? It's a bigger discussion than a bumper sticker or a headline will provide, and that's why, as always, we have to rethink what we think.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
On the road,
Getting to work or school.
And on the drive home,
your KSL co-pilots have your back.
We'll let you know where the problems are
and how to get around them.
Stay on time with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
I'm Ricky Meese.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth.
Your all-day companions on the road.
Fall's always a great time to rethink everything you're doing in your life, but here's a great chance for you to do something that will make a big difference in your financial world. Our friends at Hercules Credit Union have an extraordinary offer for you. Go in, set up a new checking account, qualify for gold tier checking status within the first 90 days, and Hercules Credit Union will deposit $200 into your account. That is a great way to start the fall season. $200 extra in your account, again, if you qualify for gold tier checking status in those first 90 days. Now, it's not just about that. You get all the benefits that go with being a gold tier member at Hercules Credit Union. You'll get travel benefits, cellular care coverage, health and wellness savings, and, of course, the ultimate identity theft protection, all through our friends at Hercules Credit Union. They have locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City. Or as always, with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, you can find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey y'all, this is Ronte, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is the pimento cheese. I was like, go cheese, go pimento, go honey, go get it.
Hi, this is Chantrice, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is the mild spiciness of the pickled jalapenos. No, it's the crispy chicken. Actually, I can't decide. It's the entire sandwich.
Order the Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich on the Chick-fil-A app today. Available for a limited time. Real Chick-fil-A guests paid for their testimonials.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by two guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you. Saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100, or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Found your dream house, but not your dream rate? Make your purchase with a home loan from Cypress Credit Union. Refinance within 12 months if rates drop, and Cypress Credit Union will take care of the refinancing fees.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, the company says it can harvest lithium from the Great Salt Lake without depleting water. Second, the Summit County Sheriff was able to keep an elderly woman from falling victim to a $15,000 scam. And third, the flu vaccine that's being promoted in the United States this fall has already proven effective in South America. Right now, 88 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
President Joe Biden is in India, and he's taking Bidenomics onto the world stage. So while at the G20 summit in India, the president will court developing nations with investments, which is what China's been doing for decades. So what will that actually look like in action? What will that actually mean? Will he be able to expand America's influence on the world stage? Will his message be met with skepticism, suspicion, or a big embrace? So we're really pleased to have joining us on the show. Gavin Bade is a reporter on the pro-trade team covering the administration and Congress's approach to industrial policy, along with other trade issues. And Gavin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
So as we look at the president taking Bidenomics onto the global stage, what's your sense rolling in?
Yeah, so President Joe Biden is, of course, in New Delhi for the G20 summit, the Group of 20 Nations summit this weekend. And a main part of his pitch here is trying to increase American investment aid to the developing world. This is a group of more than 70 countries that are generally have higher poverty levels, high debt levels from their governments. And his hope here is that he can kind of beat back Chinese influence among a lot of these nations by offering them help in making investments in the things that they need, like roads, ports, energy projects, things like that. And the reason that it's kind of notable is that we haven't paid that much attention as the U.S. government to these nations in the last probably decade, right? And in that time, the Chinese government has really increased their lending on these sort of infrastructure projects all over the world. And now we're kind of making a play to get some of that influence back.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I love the way you outline this in your piece on Politico today, that these are nations that we have kind of neglected and ignored for a while, more than a decade. Again, both left and right administrations, Republican and Democrats, have not paid significant attention in these areas. And China's been all too happy to step in and say, we're here to help. So as the president begins this in earnest, what is your sense of what that reception will be in terms of this part of the program?
I think we've seen a mixed reception so far. A lot of nations are very happy to take any sort of economic aid, either from the U.S. government or Western banks and financial institutions when they can get it. But there's also a lot of antipathy toward Western developmental institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And the reason is for decades, they would put conditions on loans and aid to the developing world saying, okay, we'll give you a bridge loan to help deal with some of your debt issues and pay your creditors. But to do that, you need to privatize, say, a state-owned water company, or you need to make certain cuts to your budget. And those didn't obviously go over very well in a lot of those nations. A lot of governments and people around the world still view those conditions as having had a bad impact on their countries rather than as helpful reforms. And so they have a really big task as they try to rebrand these institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. So Biden has installed a new World Bank president. They're coming in there and saying, we're going to give more money and we're going to do it differently than we have in the past. We want to encourage renewable energy investments. We want to encourage infrastructure investments. And I think it just remains to be seen if the world takes them seriously or not.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in your piece, there is a lot of skepticism there in terms of what this really will be. How will this be? Will this be rebranding or will this be different in terms of that?
They would.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I would say they would certainly say it's different, right? We did install a new World Bank president this year, and they are definitely trying to be more deliberate in the type of aid that they're giving to the developing world. There's a big focus on climate adaptation and clean energy projects, trying to prepare the globe for a lot of these natural disasters and climate-related disasters we've been seeing. I think there's questions of sincerity and there's also questions of scale, right? Back in 2015, when world nations signed the Paris Climate Accord, they all agreed we would give $100 billion annually to poorer nations to help with clean energy and climate adaptation. Even if all of Biden's plans go correctly, that's not going to we're not going to get anywhere near that level. So I think, there's still a lot to be done from Western governments to live up to their pledges to the developing world. I think the Biden administration says you need to start somewhere, and I think we'll see how far they can take it. Obviously, re-election for the president next year will be a big contingency on all this because if the Trump administration or another Republican comes in, they're going to have a very different view on these sorts of issues. So that's also a big roadblock for them that's looming on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that because I wanted to ask that question of uncertainty. Because clearly China is not at the party this time around at the G20. President Xi is not in attendance, so that does give President Biden some space. But in addition to the skepticism, is there also just some uncertainty in some of these nations where they might be thinking, hey, if we go more with the U.S., but then whether it's a President Trump or someone else that changes the policy a year from now, would those developing nations say, hey, that's too big a risk because China's already very happy to help us? Is it worth risking a deeper relationship with the U.S. And maybe end up on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I think whenever you talk to world leaders and representatives of world governments, you always hear that complaint that every 4 or 8 years the policy could change in the United States. I would say this is that most world leaders, especially as it comes to international trade issues, have have found that the Biden administration has not been as different from Trump as they may have thought, right? We still have our tariffs on China. We're accelerating our technological competition with China and putting new restrictions on them. So I think it remains to be seen, if we did have a Republican, I don't know if they would reverse all of the policies that are being put in place here. I think it's more of a strategic decision from the U.S. government as a whole that we need to be in the game in the developing world, and we need to confront China there. Different people have different reasons for wanting to do it. More Republicans maybe want to do it to target China. Democrats maybe want to do it for climate change, things like that. But there is some bipartisan consensus that we at least need to pay more attention to poorer nations and offer them a better deal than we did in the past. And I think the past was just, okay, if you cut tariffs, if you cut your budgets, then you'll naturally industrialize. We've seen that hasn't really worked. So I think that, world nations expect that at least some policy shift is going to happen here. It just remains to be seen how big it is.
Yeah, and clearly what the president is laying out is a big bite and a long chew in terms of changing these institutions and the process and all of this. Give us something that you're watching just quickly here in our last minute, something you're watching that might be an indicator that the president's message is getting through, or that he's at least created some space for some next steps.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be very interested in November. The U.S. is going to host the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. President Xi from China may be there. He may not. They haven't decided yet. But I think, those are a lot of very important allies and trading partners of the United States. And I would watch the reporting that comes out of there to see, from us and others, to see how the world is really reacting to the president's international economic agenda. So I think that's the next big event on the horizon.
Fantastic. Great perspective. Gavin Bade, a reporter on the pro-trade team at Politico, covering the administration and Congress's approach to industrial policy, other trade issues. Great insight on this one, Gavin. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll continue to watch as this plays out while the president is in India and then, as you said, on into November. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Boyd. Appreciate you having me.
All right. Again, that's Gavin Bade from Politico, and that's an important conversation. Again, not one that's on everybody's radar, but a very important one. China has so leaned into many of these developing nations, providing that funding and those loans so that they can industrialize and build roads and infrastructure and all of that. Can the United States lean in and take some of that influence from China away, as well as helping those developing nations? Will there be trust there, or just a lot of skepticism? We'll continue to watch that as the president's trip to India and the G20 summit rolls on. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More inside sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A building permit for a cement company is on hold in Murray after hundreds of emails were sent to the city with concerns. The Humane Society of Utah says that business would send toxic dust into the air. Legacy Materials partner Lane Myers disagrees.
Dust is our enemy as well, so we're going to be as vigilant to get rid of dust as anyone else.
Myers says they'll use a vacuum seal on their raw materials and liquid cement to avoid any dust. The company builds cement blocks for retaining walls. Summit County Sheriff Frank Smith and other deputies were able to help an elderly woman avoid being scammed by people who'd pressured her over the phone. 2 employees of a Chevron station noticed the woman getting cash from an ATM and alerted the sheriff, who had stopped there for gas. Smith says the woman was ready to hand over $15,000 to the criminals, but they talked her out of it. He's urging residents to look out for their elderly neighbors who might be vulnerable to scams. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The updated flu vaccine in South America has proved effective. That's good news for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. ABC's Dave Packer explains.
The seasons are reversed in the Southern Hemisphere, so flu season is coming to an end there as ours in the North is about to begin. CDC data showing the latest flu vaccine reduced flu-related hospitalizations in South America by 52%. That's a positive sign for flu vaccine efficacy in the U.S. this coming flu season, as early cases detected in the U.S. have involved similar strains as those circulating in the Southern Hemisphere. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 75 points at the close of trading. The NASDAQ was up just 12, and the S&P 500 was up 6 points. And our KSL weather, looks like the sun will continue into tomorrow, and then the clouds sneak in. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Every business deserves a great deal. That's why, for a limited time, we're launching the Mobile Made Free event. With Comcast Business Internet, new and existing customers can find out how to get one line of unlimited mobile free for a year. Yep, you heard that right. An entire year, free. It's our best internet, powered by the next generation 10G network and with 99.9% reliability, paired with the flexibility to bring your own mobile device for no extra cost. Plus, you can save even more on additional lines for anyone in your business who needs one. And a whole year of savings. Well, that adds up. Business-ready mobile service for free. Every day of every month for a whole year. Don't wait. The Mobile Made Free event is happening now. Comcast Business. Powering possibilities.
Ends September 21st, 2023. Restrictions apply. Mobile offer requires 100 megabits per second internet package and new unlimited intro mobile service. Other restrictions apply.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1 to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at revivemenshealth.com.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Traffic and weather together are brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Right now, we have a lot of heavy and slow traffic. This congestion is northbound on Highway 89 as you go towards the I-84 junction from SR 193. And so far, it's only on the northbound side. Again, northbound Highway 89 from SR 193 up to the I-84 junction. Utah Symphony's Films in Concert series delivers full feature films on the big screen as the orchestra plays the soundtrack live. Tickets are on sale now at utahsymphony.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny today with clouds moving in tomorrow and Sunday, and we could see a few thunderstorms in the mountains. Today's high 89, cooling to 85 by Monday. And right now, 88 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, next week, of course, the House of Representatives will return to Washington. The Senate has been in for a few days this week anyway, and the battle will begin. 11 legislative days between now and that day that amazingly comes every year, September 30th, which is the date when Congress is supposed to have the government funded by. That's when the fiscal year ends, begins again on October 1st. And so we end up with these shutdowns, showdowns, and continuing resolutions. Nobody should be surprised. September 30th always comes, but we end up with a lot of drama and debate. And this year in particular is going to be fascinating as we look at what the Republican Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, has some pretty significant obstacles to negotiate. Again, I think it ends in a continuing resolution. Our next guest, Henry Olson, one of our favorites from the Washington Post. He's a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Had a great piece in the Washington Post talking about how Kevin McCarthy could break that logjam and do it once and for all. And Henry, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
So give us some perspective. Obviously, the speaker has a little higher degree of difficulty going in with some of the things that were negotiated behind closed doors with the Freedom Caucus back when the debt ceiling was being raised earlier this year. So what is it that Kevin McCarthy is up against, and what's the path forward?
Yeah, fundamentally, the issue is that in order to get the Freedom Caucus's support, he agreed to put things and support things with respect to levels of funding that simply can't get passed. That theoretically they could get passed by the Republican House, but even the Republicans in the Senate don't want to spend that little, and certainly President Biden and the Senate Democrats won't agree to that. So what McCarthy needs to do is negotiate a comprehensive deal with the Freedom Caucus that pushes them to acknowledge political reality, but also gives them an important say in the negotiations with the Senate and the president in trying to determine what level above the Republican optimal level of spending they will go through. And if McCarthy doesn't do this, he's just kicking the can down the road and ultimately having to rely on Democratic votes, because what the Freedom Caucus will press him to agree to is not something that can pass a majority of both chambers and get President Biden's signature.
Yeah, and ultimately that is what it takes, and that is the job. It's one of the very few jobs outlined in the Constitution that both houses of Congress need to pass those 12 appropriations bills, get it to the desk of the president, get it signed, and fund the government. And so walk us through that just a little bit, Henry, in terms of in the past there's been kind of a different approach to it, or you've kind of had enough of the movable middle, I guess, in both the Democrats and the Republicans. Now in the hyper partisan world, the really polarized politics anyway, how is it that the speaker can navigate this and broaden that?
Yeah, in the past, when you had less partisanship, what you could do is negotiate more of a bipartisan deal and know that you can have a majority of the middle. That's how Social Security was reformed. People on the left of the Democrats and the right of the Republicans voted against, but the deal that President Reagan worked with the Democrats, who then controlled the House, made sure that there was a majority on both sides. That's extremely difficult to see. So what you need to do is try and understand how you negotiate. It's not a matter of what the Freedom Caucus says, which is it's going to be our way or the highway, because people will say, well, we're going to take the highway, and we'll bet that the voters will agree with us, which all the polls for years have shown that they would, even if they prefer lower spending, they will go along with higher spending if it means to avoid a shutdown. So this is McCarthy's thing, is he has to recognize that he's either increasingly pushed to try and negotiate short-term deals, or he says, look, we're going to have to share. They're going to have to come closer to my position and on political reality, but I have to cede some of my power to them so that they're involved in actually negotiating the level. It's not just something that we force on them at the last minute.
Yeah, and I love the way you outline this in your piece in the Washington Post, that having not veto power, but real substantial involvement in the process in those negotiations would really be a game changer, as opposed to, as you just described it, just shoving something at them at the last minute, that it's it's kind of that fake fight followed by the false choice thing. Having them part of the process has to change the dynamic when you get to the end.
Right, and that's one of the things that they actually complain about and people in the Senate like Rand Paul, as well as the Freedom Caucus in the House, have complained about it for years, is that this is all negotiated behind closed doors, and then they get 1,000-page or 1,500-page bill and 72 hours to read it, and they haven't had any, and then they have to vote up or down, yes or no. And that is absurd. And it would be less absurd if more people were in the room when the broths were being cooked.
Yeah, and I think that is the key, getting more people in the room where it's happening. Much easier to build a coalition around those who know what's going on or what's going into that soup as part of the process. And again, it's been interesting because both Democrats and Republicans have been on this side of it over the years. You mentioned in your piece that the Democrats like this use of a government showdown as a good way to divide Republicans. Both sides use it as a great way to raise campaign cash. They're both all in for that. That's the collusion part of the problem. What do you see in terms of getting past that this time around? How do you see it playing out between now and the 30th?
I just think it's very difficult between now and the 30th for McCarthy to be able to negotiate that sort of deal. It would be ideal if he and the Freedom Caucus could do that, but it's a short period of time. So I think between now and the 30th, what we're likely to do is see another showdown, this time between a McCarthy who is backing his Freedom Caucus, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have a short shutdown so that Republicans, particularly the conservative Republicans, can show to their base we fought. But eventually you have to fund the government. And eventually you have to come to some sort of agreement. You're not going to tolerate a 2 or 3 month unfunded discretionary spending package. So that's going to mean some sort of negotiated deal that gets forced down people's throats. But then what McCarthy has to do is go back and say, never again. We're never going to do this again.
Yeah.
It means that you're never going to force me to have to do it again, and I'm never going to put myself in a position to do it again.
Yeah, and getting more people in the room, I think, is the perfect place to begin all of that in terms of that substantial involvement in the process. The process matters, and I think you're spot on in terms of getting the framing right on all of that. Anything else you're watching in the coming days that might give us an indicator of how this is going to move out?
I don't think anything's going to happen over the weekend. I think what you're going to do is for the first week or so, you're going to see people play chicken.
Mm-hmm.
That the House needs to stay firm for internal management reasons and try and push through levels of spending that were lower than what was agreed to with respect to how they resolved the debt limit showdown back in the spring. And the Senate Republicans and the Democrats are going to say no. And so we'll go through next week going through some kabuki theater the chest bumping.
Yeah.
And then the real negotiations will start. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some feelers back and forth of people already saying, well, what could you live with? But the Senate Republicans and the president and the Senate Democrats say, look, we made a deal back in March. You need to deal with the deal.
Yeah.
And the question is, how much leeway does McCarthy have to actually go back and say, yeah, actually, I do have to deal with the deal, and how much change can he force, or what additional terms can he push? Could he say, well, yeah, we have to deal with the deal, but you have to fund the border, or we have to deal with the deal, but you have to do this, so that he can get a real win out of it. Negotiations, it's like unions. It's like the union labor negotiations. Sometimes it looks like a strike is inevitable, and amazingly, 24 hours before the deadline, they find agreement. I expect that could be what happened, but my greater expectation is this time we're going to have a shutdown, and then we'll resolve it sometime in early October.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic perspective. As always, Henry Olson, Washington Post columnist and senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Henry, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Again, that's Henry Olson from the Washington Post. And again, we're going to continue to watch that play out in the coming weeks. We're going to step aside for one last break. It's not every day somebody turns 99. That's worth noting. That's worth celebrating. And probably a few principles in there worth emulating. We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around.
Before you head to work, before you hit the gym,
keep going, that's it.
Before you make your way home,
bye.
Get a quick check on traffic and weather.
PD on the scene at 8 South and West Temple.
Highway 89 also really backed up. Listen every 10 minutes on the 9s, in your car at 102.7 FM, or tell Alexa, play KSL News Radio.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at Mountain America Expo, Thursday, September 14th through Sunday, September 17th. Come see the new 2024 models and special closeout pricing on all 2023 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
Hey, BYU football fans, come see KSL's own Mitch Harper this Friday, September 8th at Macy's Grocery Store in American Fork. 135 East Main Street from 4 to 7 p.m. for fun, prizes, and chances to win tickets to the BYU Southern Utah football game or a $50 Macy's gift card. You'll have multiple chances to win every hour. And during the broadcast, be sure to visit the Macy's Meat Department and pick up some of their easy meals. They're all cut, seasoned, and prepared for you. Just put them on the grill or in the oven, and you have dinner and a snap. Meals that are perfect for dinner or any tailgate party. So celebrate the football season and join KSL's own Mitch Harper this Friday, September 8th at Macy's Tailgate at American Fort from 4 to 7 p.m. Food, activities for the family, and enter to win tickets to the BYU Southern Utah football game or a $50 Macy's gift card. Macy's. Happy shopping!
It's me again. And of course, I'm at the annual fall extravaganza at J&J Garden Center in Layton. And what a great time to buy. Right now, all containerized trees, all shrubs, and all perennials are 20% off. You heard me right. J&J's entire inventory of containerized trees, shrubs, and perennials are 20% off their regular price. J&J Garden Center definitely has the best products at the best price and most definitely the best service too. But don't take my word for it. Come experience J&J Garden Center for yourself. Take advantage of their incredible fall tree, shrub, and perennial extravaganza. Take the Layton Parkway exit, Main Street to Gentile, then west 2 miles. You've got to see it to believe it. You really do.
Country grown to your home. J&J Garden Center.
Happy 62nd birthday, Granddad.
Thanks, sweetheart.
I got you this.
A mug. Oh, thank you. What does it say? Beware. If you are 60 or older, you may be at increased risk of hospitalization from RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, compared to adults younger than 60.
Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, Murray city officials have put a building permit for a cement company on hold after hearing a lot of public comments. Second, 80 new Americans took the oath of citizenship today in West Jordan. They come from all over the world. And third, President Biden met with India's Prime Minister today. The president is attending the G20 summit in India. 88 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and tomorrow is an important birthday, a 99th birthday for President Russell M. Nelson, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But before we get to celebrating and looking at the lessons learned over 99 amazing years, we have to actually start with today, because today is Elder Quentin L. Cook's 83rd birthday. Elder Cook, of course, of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ. And these are 2 extraordinary world leaders. The fact that they have back-to-back birthdays is kind of a fun thing. But to help us get some perspective, and not the resumes, we know the resumes of these 2 extraordinary individuals. We want to get to the principles. And to help us do that, as always, we turn to Sarah Jane Weaver, the executive editor of the Church News. And she joins us on the line. Sarah, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Boyd.
So let's start with Elder Quentin L. Cook, 83rd birthday. And let's start with kind of an overriding principle from your perspective as it relates to Elder Cook. What is one of those driving principles for him over his 83 years?
Well, Elder Cook is a bridge builder. He is always reaching out and building connections with people of many different faith traditions. He appreciates where they come from. He is quick to find common ground, and he is able to connect with them in a really beautiful way.
I love that. And one of the things that I have always appreciated about Elder Cook, he has an incredible He is a voracious reader, consumer of news, everything from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Post, I think every day since he was a young missionary. But he has this curiosity to know what's going on in the world and then to figure out ways to actually do something about it, to apply something. And I think that's kind of a lost art in the world today.
Well, it is absolutely a huge task to find something that Elder Cook has not read. He has indeed read the New York Times every single day since he was just a young adult.
Yeah, and let's talk for a second about one of his real passions. He loves history, of course. He has a great connection to the British Isles, where he served as a missionary for the church and has had many experiences there. He is someone who loves the principles of freedom and democracy and our constitutional republic. You've seen him in many settings as a world religious leader. You've seen him with government officials around the world. Give us a sense of kind of his focus on freedom and its importance in the world.
Yeah, he is a huge advocate of religious liberty, has spoken on behalf of the church in numerous settings across the globe, advocating for religious liberty. And he has this beautiful thing where he talks about people who are accountable to God should work together. And I love that, because anyone who feels accountable to a higher power than something on earth can find great strength in linking arms and working together.
Yeah, I so love that. And I've seen him do that in so many different places and spaces around the world. He is just such a force for good. And often he's one of those, he's slightly under the radar, but his influence and his reach is just so extensive. It is a great model for all of us. He's often in the fingerprint business. He is always making his imprint because he knows things, because he's read things, and because his brilliant mind has this way of framing things that I think is helpful to everyone across the spectrum.
Yeah, people say that there are very few people smarter than Elder Cook. And maybe the only person is Sister Cook.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. I would buy into that theory. And the thing that I love about him especially is often he is the smartest person in the room. Some people who are the smartest person in the room, everybody leaves feeling a little dumber or a little less than. When you are with Elder Quentin L. Cook, you leave the room feeling smarter, feeling better armed and capable to do things. And
yeah, he has.
Oh, go ahead.
He has a great capacity to validate people in the room.
Yeah.
Like President Nelson, he wants to know their opinions, and he is a very good listener, which is such an interesting quality for someone who is so smart and so well read.
Yeah, no question. 83rd birthday for Elder Quentin L. Cook today, and then tomorrow, of course, it will be the 99th birthday for President Russell M. Nelson, President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Sarah, you have followed him, chased him, tracked him down as he has had a global ministry. Give us some principles that come to mind to you when you think of 99 years of President Russell M. Nelson.
Well, isn't it amazing that he'll be 99 on 9/9? Oh. So I love that, and I can't help but think of all he has seen as he enters his 100th year. The year he was born, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had a membership of just 598,000. There were only 6 operating temples, 90 stakes, 25 missions, and less than 1,000 missionaries. And now we are to the point where we have over 300 temples and almost 17 million members, and this very, very global church. And that all happened in his lifetime.
Yeah, it's so stunning. And one of the things that we had noted this week that to me is one of those guiding principles for President Nelson over his 99 years is that he really does believe that it doesn't matter who gets the credit. You can accomplish anything. And we know this past week he donated his journals, his medical journals, to the University of Utah. And that's just so classic Russell M. Nelson of he wants everyone to know, everyone to share, because that's how he believes innovation and progress is really made.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful thing to have someone leading the church in this time who has seen so much and seen progress and innovation. I often think of those years that he pioneered the heart-lung machine and the work he did that saved countless lives when it came to the advancements he made in the medical field. And then the day came when he was asked to walk away from that to pursue or to accept an invitation to give full-time church service, and he just did that. He once said, I think we both heard, a little boy ask him, was it hard for you to leave your medical profession behind and enter full-time church service? And he said, no, I walked through the door and closed it behind me, because he's forward-thinking.
Yeah.
And isn't that great that going into his 100th year, we have someone who continues to look forward and doesn't spend so much time looking back.
Yeah, I love that. And I think his wife, Wendy Nelson, commented not too long ago that the older he's gotten, the more forward-focused he's actually become. And I think that's a real gift and an important lesson for all of us. We start looking back in the good old days, but looking forward is where it is. And Sarah, just in our last minute here, give us one more principle, maybe in particular over these last 5.5, almost 6 years now since he's been the president of the Church of Jesus Christ. What's a principle that you've taken away from that part of his ministry as a world religious leader?
Well, he leads with enormous energy. In just 17 months early in his ministry, he visited 35 nations. He's continued to reach out to global membership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints through technology. He builds bridges, and when you interview him, he always does look forward. He says there is much more to come, and I think that's the message of his 99th birthday, and as he enters his 100th year, we can all say to ourselves, we hope there is much, much, much more to come.
I love that. And as he always says, take your vitamins and buckle up your chin strap. It's going to get very exciting along the way. Sarah Jane Weaver, executive editor of the Church News, thanks so much for helping us celebrate the birthdays both of Quentin L. Cook, 83 years, and President Russell M. Nelson, 99 years tomorrow. Both have extraordinary lives and legacies and principles. And as Sarah mentioned, looking forward, I think two things you'll continue to see from President Nelson is this focus on peacemaking and forgiveness, important principles. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. We have 88 degrees in Salt Lake City. KSL's top story. Thousands of people all over the internet are trying to get access to Ruby Frankie's court hearing this afternoon. This has created a huge mess for the courts down in St. George. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe has been monitoring this child abuse case, or at least trying to monitor the court session. Amy, what's going on?